On the morning of November 10th, 2015, the calm that had long settled over Indianapolis was violently disrupted. Inside her home, 28-year-old Amanda Grace Blackburn was confronted by intruders. As her 1-year-old son slept nearby, she tried to shield him from harm. During the break-in, she was shot. When her husband, Davy Blackburn, returned home, he found Amanda still clinging to life. She was rushed to the hospital, but 2 days later, she succumbed to her injuries. At first, the tragedy appeared to be a horrific burglary that spiraled out of control. But as investigators dug deeper, the case evolved into something far more complex. Over the following years, what emerged was a chilling story involving calculated violence, a string of ruthless break-ins, and a trail of evidence that would eventually lead to multiple arrests and courtroom battles. The killing of Amanda Blackburn, a young pregnant pastor's wife, gripped national headlines. The brutality of the crime shocked the community and drew widespread attention. Yet lingering questions remained. Was this simply a robbery that went tragically wrong, or were there deeper secrets hidden behind the closed doors of that suburban home? Years later, after mistrials, renewed investigations, and painstaking legal proceedings, justice was ultimately delivered in 2022, but not without leaving behind a haunting narrative that continues to captivate true crime followers. The young couple frequently shared glimpses of their life together online, posting about their marriage and even filming Q&A-style videos where they responded to questions from members of the congregation at the church Davy had established, Resonate Church. Not long after relocating to Indianapolis, their seemingly joyful life would be shattered by tragedy. Photograph after photograph showed Amanda and Davy Blackburn smiling warmly, embracing one another, and holding their little son, Weston, close. Those images of happiness stand in heartbreaking contrast to what occurred on the morning of November 10, 2015. Around 6 a.m., Pastor Davy Blackburn left their home to go to the gym, leaving behind Amanda, who was 12 weeks pregnant, and their 15-month-old son. When he returned roughly 2 hours later, he discovered Amanda unconscious inside their northwest Indianapolis home. She had been shot during what investigators described as a robbery. Despite medical efforts, Amanda died 2 days later. The coroner ruled her death a homicide caused by a fatal gunshot wound to the head. In a statement released afterward, Davy described his wife as a beautiful, gracious, loving woman of God. He said he had lost not only his ministry partner and strongest supporter, but also his best friend. Though overwhelmed with grief, he expressed hope that something meaningful might come from the tragedy. The couple's toddler son was left without his mother, and Amanda had been expecting their second child at the time of her death. Authorities condemned the crime as both brutal and senseless. The case quickly drew nationwide attention and intense public speculation. Investigators released surveillance images captured by a neighbor's camera system in the Sunnyfield neighborhood. The photos showed a man police believed was connected to the crime. He was described as standing between 5'4" and 5'9", with a slim to medium build, wearing light-colored pants and a two-tone hoodie. According to police, the suspect may have observed Davy leaving the house and taken that moment as an opportunity to break in. A nearby resident reported hearing gunshots approximately 35 minutes after Davy departed. Detectives questioned several individuals and detained some on unrelated charges while pursuing leads. Initially, authorities shared few details, but they later revealed that Amanda's killing appeared to be connected to a burglary that had taken place just 2 doors down earlier that same morning. Investigators urged the public to come forward with any information, emphasizing that even the smallest detail could assist detectives working to solve the case. As it would later become clear, Amanda Blackburn's murder was not an isolated incident, but part of a much larger and unfolding chain of events. The violence reportedly started at the Westlake Apartments in Indianapolis. According to court records, Taylor and Weston forced their way into a unit while a young woman was showering. Weston allegedly confronted her at gunpoint, forcing her out of the bathroom. Taylor then sexually assaulted her. The attackers demanded her bank cards and took numerous personal belongings, including her phone, purse, jewelry, television, and her 2007 Chrysler Sebring. As a result of that incident, the group faced charges including burglary, theft, armed robbery, and, in Taylor's case, rape. But that first assault marked only the beginning. November 4th, a fatal robbery. The following day, police say Taylor attempted to rob a man who had only $10 in his wallet. The victim, later identified as Rolando Gonzalez Hernandez, was shot in the head and killed. Authorities charged Taylor with murder, felony murder, and robbery resulting in serious bodily injury. 6 days later, on November 10th, Taylor and Weston were allegedly involved in a string of robberies that included breaking into the home of Davy Blackburn, lead pastor of Resonate Church, and his wife, Amanda Blackburn. That morning, shortly after 6 a.m., Davy Blackburn left for the gym, unaware that his pregnant wife and their 1-year-old son were alone in the house. Police reports indicate the front door was unlocked when Taylor and Weston entered. When Davy returned, he found signs of a violent struggle and his wife shot in the head. Their infant son was discovered unharmed in his crib. Court documents allege that Taylor initially shot Amanda and handed her bank cards to Weston and Gordon, directing them to withdraw cash from ATMs. While they left, Taylor reportedly remained in the home. Investigators say neighbors heard gunshots around 6:45 a.m. and saw an SUV leaving the otherwise quiet neighborhood. Amanda Blackburn was sexually assaulted and ultimately fatally shot. The following day, the stolen 2007 Chrysler Sebring was located just a few miles from the Blackburn residence. Inside, investigators found ATM receipts and other evidence linking the suspects to Amanda Blackburn's bank cards. Descriptions of suspects and financial transaction records helped police connect the series of crimes. What began as a burglary rapidly escalated into multiple violent felonies, leaving the city stunned by the speed and brutality of the 8-day spree. By piecing together surveillance footage, financial records, and forensic evidence, authorities built a case tying the suspects to each incident, from the initial apartment robbery to the murders that followed. The investigation into the death of Amanda Blackburn eventually centered on a crucial piece of physical evidence, a pink sweater. The garment had been stolen earlier the same day from a home that had also been targeted in a string of burglaries. When police later located the stolen 2007 Chrysler Sebring connected to the suspects, they found the sweater inside. DNA recovered from it was matched to one of the men involved, strengthening the case against the group. That forensic link tied Larry Taylor and Jalen Weston directly to the events surrounding Amanda's killing. Both men were ultimately charged with murder. A third suspect, Diano Gordon, was not charged with murder because investigators determined he had not entered the Blackburn home. However, he still faced multiple counts of burglary and theft for break-ins that occurred earlier that same day. At the time, Weston was already in custody for a parole violation unrelated to the homicide. As detectives continued piecing the case together, they recovered the firearm used in the shooting, ATM receipts from transactions made with stolen cards, and additional evidence found inside the abandoned vehicle. One suspect cooperated with investigators, helping authorities reconstruct the timeline of the crime spree. The case quickly gained national attention. Major outlets such as ABC News, Fox News, and the Daily Mail covered the story extensively, bringing widespread public focus to the tragedy. On November 17th, Amanda's husband, Davy Blackburn, gave his first public interview on Good Morning America, expressing grief and disbelief over losing his wife and unborn child. Closer to home, Amanda's funeral at Traders Point Christian Church drew more than 2,000 mourners, including former Indiana Governor Mike Pence. Although arrests had been made and the case appeared close to resolution, public conversation soon shifted. Some observers began questioning Davy Blackburn's demeanor in the weeks following the murder. His interviews, sermons, and online posts struck critics as emotionally distant. He repeatedly spoke about surrendering to faith and used the phrase, "nothing is wasted," as a central message in his ministry. In the months after Amanda's death, that phrase became a recurring theme in his public work. It appeared in blog posts, sermons, a book, a podcast, and even engraved on Amanda's headstone. While Davy stated that his faith sustained him and that he felt relief when arrests were made, segments of the public interpreted his tone and promotional efforts as unsettling given the circumstances. Meanwhile, the facts of the case remained grounded in evidence. Emergency crews had responded to the Blackburn home around 8:30 a.m. on November 10, 2015. Amanda was found critically injured and died 2 days later. Through forensic analysis, recovered property, financial records, and cooperation from one suspect, investigators built what they described as a strong, evidence-based case against the men charged in her death. After being declared brain dead, Amanda's organs were recovered for donation, allowing her to help others even in death. On the morning of the tragedy, Davy Blackburn later testified that he returned home from the gym around 7:30 a.m. While sitting in his driveway, he remained on the phone with his friend, Kenneth Wagner. He said he stepped out of his vehicle at times, pacing and glancing through the front door window to see whether his young son, Weston, had woken up. According to his account, he ended the call and entered the house at approximately 8:10 a.m. Inside, he discovered his wife, Amanda Blackburn, lying face down on the floor. He stated that she appeared to be either injured or unconscious. At 8:22 a.m., he placed a 911 call. Later, he explained that he initially believed something had gone wrong with her pregnancy, that she might have become dizzy and fallen. However, questions arose about what he claimed not to have noticed during those 12 minutes. Amanda had suffered a catastrophic head injury, and brain matter was visible several feet from her body. Davy said he then went outside to wait for paramedics, rather than checking on Weston, who was still upstairs in his room. He acknowledged that responders seemed puzzled that he had not gone to check on his son before their arrival. His delay, nearly 40 minutes spent in the driveway that morning, became a focal point in the case. The first emergency medical technician to arrive after the 911 call was Scott Floyd of the Indianapolis Fire Department. Floyd testified that Davy Blackburn was standing at the end of his driveway when they arrived, with blood visible on his hands and arms. He described Davy as unusually calm under the circumstances. Davy reportedly told responders he did not know what had happened, only that his wife was on the floor and he had been unable to wake her. Upon entering the home, Floyd observed Amanda on the floor with severe head trauma. Blood surrounded her, and brain matter was located roughly 5 to 6 feet away. Recognizing the suspicious nature of the scene, Floyd alerted his lieutenant and recommended that the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department be contacted immediately. In the aftermath, many members of the public expected Pastor Blackburn to speak openly and emotionally about his wife. Instead, some were struck by how composed he appeared and by statements in which he did not even mention Amanda by name. Reactions quickly divided. Some defended him out of loyalty to their shared faith, while others criticized both his demeanor and those who supported him, arguing that religious loyalty was shaping public perception of the case. 2 years before the tragedy that would later shake their community, the Blackburn family relocated to Indianapolis with a clear mission: to plant a new church. Prior to that move, they had spent 4 years in South Carolina, where Davy Blackburn worked as an assistant pastor at New Spring Church. Their new venture in Indianapolis was called Resonate Church, a young and modern congregation designed to connect with millennials and young families. The church embraced a contemporary style, regularly posting sermon videos online and addressing relatable topics such as dating, communication struggles, marriage challenges, and biblical perspectives on sexuality. The approach was casual and transparent, aiming to meet young believers where they were in life. In a sermon delivered on October 27th, a message that has since been removed from public access, Davy and Amanda spoke candidly about the ups and downs of their marriage. They shared how their love story began on a blind date, arranged at a time when Amanda's sister was dating Davy's best friend. Their first outing included a concert by the Christian band Hawk Nelson, and despite attending different colleges, they quickly formed a strong connection. During Davy's fall break, they spent nearly the entire week together. The day before he returned to school, they held a playful milkshake drinking contest. Amanda lost, and as Davy fondly teased, milkshake came out of her nose. It was in that light-hearted, awkward moment that he later said he realized she was the woman he would marry. From the outside, they appeared to have the ideal relationship, young, passionate, and devoted to faith and ministry. Yet behind the scenes, they acknowledged that their marriage required effort. Like many couples balancing ambition, ministry, and personal expectations, they experienced tension and growing pains even while presenting a polished image to their congregation. Their story, at least in those early years, was one of hope, youthful vision, and the challenges of building both a church and a marriage at the same time. In a recorded Q&A-style church service on October 27th, Amanda reflected on their honeymoon with warmth and simplicity. They enjoyed small pleasures, virgin pina coladas, relaxing together, taking photos, and described being deeply in love. But she admitted that reality set in quickly. The day after returning home, Davy went back to work, and the honeymoon phase seemed to end almost instantly. Before their wedding, much of their relationship had been long distance. They had never spent more than a few consecutive weeks together. Amanda explained that during dating, strong emotions can overshadow incompatibilities or minor irritations. Marriage, however, has a way of magnifying those very things. Eventually, they sought counseling and worked on improving their communication. In an October 20th sermon titled "Bringing Sexy Back," Davy stood alone on stage wearing a dark t-shirt, gray hoodie, and camouflage pants. He spoke openly about Amanda's commitment to a purity pledge she had taken as a teenager. She had honored it so seriously that she refused to kiss anyone before marriage. Davy described how meaningful that was to him, saying that when he finally kissed her, he felt it confirmed a unique bond within what he believed was God's plan for them. By January 31st, 2016, Davy posted a photo thanking his church staff for creating a personalized green room filled with his favorite items and inspirational signs before he preached. At the time, the Church Resonate Church was meeting in a middle school and did not yet have a permanent building. One sign in the green room stood out prominently: "Nothing is wasted." Just 3 months after Amanda's murder, the Blackburn family's 1,776-square-foot home was listed for sale on February 22, 2016. It sold 2 months later for $145,000. Even before the sale closed, Davy had purchased a significantly larger property, 5,186 square feet, with 5 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, and a pool under the business name NIW Serendipity LLC on March 2, 2016. By July of that year, he shared posts about hosting pool parties at the new house. Nearly 2 years later, on March 18, 2018, Davy and his new wife Christy registered the website nothingiswasted.com, building on the phrase that had become closely associated with his ministry message. Around the same time, public attention resurfaced when Davy announced his engagement. Media headlines noted that the Indianapolis pastor whose pregnant wife had been murdered was preparing to remarry. For Amanda's family, such developments reportedly remained painful long after media coverage faded. Despite public speculation in the early days of the investigation, police quickly ruled Davy out as a suspect. Authorities stated he had a solid alibi, he was at the gym at the time of the shooting, and determined he had no involvement in the crime. Instead, investigators focused on 3 young men connected to a burglary spree on the day Amanda was killed. Those suspects were 18-year-old Larry Taylor, 21-year-old Jalen Watson, and 24-year-old Deanna Gordon. Prosecutors, including Marion County Prosecutor Terry Curry, considered whether Amanda's pregnancy could enhance potential charges. After years of legal proceedings, including 2 mistrials in Larry Taylor's case, COVID-related delays, attorney changes, and challenges in narrowing witness testimony, Taylor was ultimately convicted in a bench trial. He was found guilty of murder, burglary, multiple counts of theft, auto theft, criminal confinement, and carrying a handgun without a license. He was acquitted of robbery and 1 murder count. In total, he had faced 14 charges. Jalen Watson and Deanna Gordon accepted plea agreements. In exchange for testifying against Taylor, murder charges against them were dropped. Both admitted involvement in multiple burglaries that day, but stated that Taylor was the one who fired the fatal shot inside Amanda's home. Gordon was sentenced to 30 years, with 25 years to be served in prison and 5 on probation. Watson initially received a 29-year sentence for robbery, resulting in serious bodily injury, along with additional time for burglary charges to be served concurrently. However, a December 2, 2022 court order reduced his sentence by 14 years. Under the modification, he is to serve 10 years in the Indiana Department of Correction, 5 years on home detention through Marion County Community Corrections, followed by 4 years of probation. Years after the tragedy, the legal process reached its conclusion. But for those closest to Amanda Blackburn, the impact of that November 2015 crime continues to linger well beyond the courtroom. The court ruled that Watson would receive credit for the time he had already spent in custody, along with consideration for good behavior during his period of home detention. In addition to his sentence, the judge ordered that Watson undergo a mental health evaluation and participate in appropriate treatment. He was also prohibited from having any contact with Taylor under a formal no-contact order. Following the sentencing, Davy Blackburn did not issue a public statement addressing the court's decision. Instead, he shared a lyric from the band Sleeping at Last on his Facebook page. "Darkness exists to make light truly count." He added that it was one of his favorite lines from a song, a reflection that came after everything he had endured. Even in the deepest valley, when life feels overshadowed by darkness, there can be a renewed gratitude for light and for simply being alive. Sometimes, the heavier the darkness becomes, the more powerfully our light can stand out. Don't allow evil or despair to extinguish that light. The Blackburn case is just one of many tragedies that have drawn widespread public attention. In 1 year alone, Indianapolis recorded 134 criminal homicide victims, only 1 fewer than the total in 2014. Of those cases, roughly 60 remain unsolved, and the violence hasn't been limited to fatal incidents. The city also experienced a 22% rise in non-fatal shootings compared to previous years. Authorities have pointed to several contributing factors behind the surge in violent crime: drug activity, gang involvement, illegal firearms, poverty, and mental health struggles. These broader issues form the backdrop to cases like this one. Still, many people remain focused on Pastor Davy Blackburn and his conduct following the murder of his wife, Amanda Blackburn. Some observers have questioned what they perceived as unusual or emotionally distant behavior in the weeks after her death. Others wonder whether he could have played a larger role than what was publicly established, or whether law enforcement was too quick to clear him without deeper scrutiny. Do you believe justice was fully served? Should investigators have pursued additional angles, or was the evidence strong enough to rule out further suspicion? Cases like this continue to spark debate among true crime followers. Thank you for taking the time to reflect on this story. Stay engaged, keep asking thoughtful questions, and continue seeking truth with care and discernment. That concludes today's deep dive. Thank you to all our armchair detectives for joining us as we explored the case of Amanda and Davy Blackburn. Your curiosity and commitment to uncovering the truth truly matter. Stay connected with True Crime Story Archive for more intriguing cases each week. Be sure to subscribe for regular true crime updates. Keep investigating, keep questioning, and together, let's continue the pursuit of justice.